family, we engaged in a project of painting. Our older daughter moved out, and so the younger one wanted the bigger room, and we decided we were going to paint. Painting the walls, painting the trim, and then we also decided to take down wallpaper, thanks to Don's work, and painted the hallway. It's something we've wanted to do for some time. So we completed this project, thanks to the help of our kids who stepped in, our son and our youngest. And afterwards, I walked down the hallway, and I'm like, wow. This looks really sharp. It looks really good. I like how it looks. And I went outside one morning last week and I was thinking about this and the fact that it's like, okay, now I'm going to put pictures on the wall. And I started thinking about other things I wanted to do. I want to clean up the kitchen. As I'm thinking about these things, this little voice said, oh, who are you kidding? You're not going to follow through on that. And instead of pushing it away, which I typically might do to shift myself, I went, wait a minute, I think that's my judge. And I stopped and went, okay, Judge, let's hear you. What do you got to say? You're telling me that I'm not going to follow through, that why do I have these thoughts of doing all kinds of cleanup and making my kitchen look organized and clean and fresh, and you're telling me I'm not going to follow through with it. So isn't that interesting? That's what you have to say to me. And this was a shift for me to not just go, okay, that's negative, move on, but to acknowledge it, to look at it. I learned this from the Positive Intelligence program. I completed the 7-week program and I'm continuing working with it. And so it was a change in mindset for me to hear that voice. Okay, this is what it's saying to me. It's sabotaging me and telling me I can't do this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to stop and examine that and I'm going to hear it. And I talked it over with my friends from the group and looking at what saboteur is involved, and we definitely think it's the judge, and just seeing that out there. And it's a way to make a shift. And then the next step that you learn from the program is using one of your PQ reps. Just closing your eyes for a minute, focusing for a minute if possible or more on what you hear, tuning into some sounds, some external things to your body, the feelings. My favorite is walking around, just feeling your feet on the ground and all the different sensations of your feet. If you can do that for even 10 seconds, you're commanding your mind, you're taking charge of it and building that muscle that leads to positive thinking and positive action.
Well, hello. It's Gina and Don with Focused Healthy Family, and this is podcast number 21. And today we're talking about positive intelligence, part 2, where we kind of go deeper into what Gina's experience was. But before we do that, we want to get a word from our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. Or you can find a link on the front page of the focusedhealthyfamily.com website.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
And we're back. And I have to say, when you're telling this, when you talk about the judge, my mind goes back to when I was growing up as a kid. I don't know if it was Flip Wilson that started the, "Here come the judge, here come the judge." It used to be like, and it just like took off as everybody was kind of saying it about things, anything. They, "Here come the judge, here come the," I don't know.
Oh,
sorry.
Like an actual person, a judge, or just?
It was just it was like relating to any, I think, like I said, I think it was Flip Wilson that started it.
This is before my time.
But anyway.
Interesting. Interesting
That
memory.
was just what was going through my mind when you were saying all
And I was
that.
telling the story. So you didn't really hear anything.
No, I heard the story too, because we were painting. I know the painting, and there were probably a lot of judgments in my part too, for myself, because I was, I wanted you to trim just perfect, and letting our oldest, he was not as keen on that. He was just kind of doing it and
Focused on completion.
Yeah. So I think I was putting a lot of different judgments on him and on myself. Probably you too, I don't know.
And so in the past, I've done lots of positive work and lots of refocusing and reframing. And sometimes I think I reframe too quickly, that I don't stop and go, okay, what's going on here? What's this voice? And by calling it out, it's kind of like calling out a kid who's misbehaving or something. You're like focusing, like, okay, what's going on? There's a need going on. There's a need that needs to be met. Why am I hearing this? Our previous podcast, we kind of went into the basic background behind positive intelligence, the science, talking about the sage brain, which is kind of our higher brain, our higher self that we're connected with if we have religious beliefs with God or a spiritual power, or just that tuning in to who we really are, our true self, versus the saboteur, the judge. And we talked about the whole assessment that you can see on positiveintelligence.com of the different ways that we sabotage ourselves and our decisions.
Well, I liked the fact that you talked about it, kind of accepting the negative. That's and again, I go back to what I do with my own clients, and that's one of the biggest things, that we want to catch the triggers and accept them, because what we tend to do is beat ourselves up about it or distract ourselves from it. We don't really need to do that. We need to be able to catch it and then slowly work on changing it.
It's a lot like OCD ERP therapy, as you're describing that if we just distract from it, we're just delaying the inevitable. So now I've completed the 7-week program. We met once a week with my pod. We actually interacted via online and chat daily, going through these different areas. And then after you complete the 7 weeks, you have access to the app for a full year. And so what you get to do from here, during those 7 weeks, they guide you in their specific lessons each week and each day that you listen to with exercises. And there's an initial video, which is close to an hour, but they break it up into like 10, 15-minute segments so you can listen to it piece by piece. And then the daily ones are like 2 minutes long, 3 minutes at most. It's very doable. I would turn it on as I was getting ready in the morning. And then after you've completed those 7 weeks, you get to choose what comes next. You can choose working on any of your saboteurs, managing stress, improving relationships, improving performance, as well as surprise me. And it gives you a random one to work on. And so it's a way of thinking about things for the day, deciding what you're going to do differently, and making one small choice and thinking about one area that you can work on to increase the power of the positive aspects of your mind to help empower you with choices that you do want to make to be more productive, more effective, and feeling better about yourself and your choices. So I've started the habit almost always now when I shower. In the app, there's what's called the gym, and there's different types of PQ reps, as he calls them, that you can do. And you can do, there's 2-minute, 5-minute, and 12-minute. So my favorite is this moving 12-minute. And he talks about tuning into different senses. And he goes from feeling things to hearing to feeling your sensations in your feet and your legs and onto different sensations. So I don't have to follow it exactly when I do it, but it helps me to hear him. Also, as my mind wanders, he brings me back and he'll say, don't beat yourself up. In fact, when you do these, if you listen to a 12-minute, so each 10 seconds is one PQ rep, but you cut that in half because you figure your mind's going to wander about half the time you're doing it. So that's kind of all worked into his magic little formula. And so by doing this each morning, it is helping to shift my brain. I get out of the place of what happened yesterday, trying to redo it, rethinking, overanalyzing that I tend to fall into quickly. And I did notice, though, for a while I was listening to the same one all the time, and I needed to pick a new one because I was kind of tuning it out because I had heard it so much. But I'm finding it as another tool. We talk about having different tools in our toolkit, different things we've learned from EFT. I did Reiki training long before I found EFT, different meditation, mindfulness practices. A lot of these things, they really overlap.
Well, it kind of plays into the positive direction.
Okay.
This is something I talk about a lot too, and a friend of mine, Bert Freeman, had this was kind of his philosophy or his way of thinking, but it's turning things slowly to a positive instead of trying to jump from when you come out with a message of I'm not smart enough, let's say, you can't, the mind wouldn't be able to handle going from being able to say I'm smart enough from I'm not smart enough to I'm smart enough. It's kind of a big leap for a mind to go through without blowing up. So he talks about taking small steps to get there. So instead of when you catch yourself with the idea of I'm not smart enough, you would say something like I'm not smart enough, or there are times when I feel like I'm not smart enough, but I'm working on that.
Even though I've had this thought that I'm not smart enough.
There's
it's
another
an EFT
way.
phrasing.
Yeah. And
I'm choosing something different.
And the next one might be, even though there are times when I feel like I'm not smart enough, I'm working on that too. Or I am good enough. Well, again, you don't want to jump that fast, but it's a slow process. And I think that's with what we're talking about.
Yeah, we talked about the science behind it last time. I don't want to interrupt you there.
No, it's all right.
And the neurons firing, that if something happens, like I have this idea to do a project and I go, oh, you're not going to follow through with it, I've strengthened that firing pathway in my brain, that every time I think that fires in me. And so I need to strengthen new neuron pathway and weaken that one. And so by doing these exercises, that's what it's working to strengthen. And I've seen a difference. I've gotten really close with, it's me and 4 other women that have stuck with this and worked on it. We're still meeting up weekly, going beyond the actual course. And I've lost my train of thought. Where are the neurons firing? We do accountability. So we decide, what are we committing to do for this week? And we try to keep it simple, but very measurable, very real. One time it was, I'm going to take a bath when I get home. I'm going to soak in Epsom salt and enjoy myself. And, there was a week when we were all like vowing to take baths, and and it can be that simple, right? I've made goals of writing, and I made some goals that I wasn't meeting. I said I was going to write 3 times a week. I was going to walk. And I wasn't following through on it. So I was like, okay, I need to re-examine my goal and rethink how I'm setting it and shift a little bit. And so it's just this ongoing process of, and it's been a combination for me. I've grown a close connection with these women, which is helpful. When you have people that, not just people you can gossip with or do things you enjoy, but this real connection of
commiserate with.
right. And we share our struggles with each other, and yet we also boost each other up and acknowledge where we're at. And we go on, we use the Marco Polo app I think I've told you about, where you video voice record. If someone is on live, they can listen, they can't participate, or you can watch it later. And we go on and we'll do shout, look what you've done this week. I'm honoring where you are. I'm sending you thoughts. Know you're struggling with this, and I see this in you. And, wow, look at how well you do this, and I appreciate this in you. And so we're constantly giving each other this feedback, and it's uplifting. It's empowering to hear what other people say and to feel really heard. Last week, I believe it was, one of the women, I got talking about the work we do with kids and really listening and tuning in and paying attention. And she's a teacher, and she told me that she went to school, and she really noticed this kid, and she really listened and tuned into him and just talked about how powerful that was. And she thanked me for that, and then she called me a rock star. And that just lit me up inside, right? You know, the seeking approval from outside ourselves. We talk about that in our workshops, that we really need to learn to, you know, have approval from within. Yet we all like to hear that from others.
Well,
we like the acknowledgement of...
It's a little different, too. You weren't seeking it. You weren't doing any of this to necessarily get approval.
Right.
And she gave it to you freely.
That's true.
And that's different. That's much more.
And it was more about feeling seen and heard. Like, oh wow, she really sees me.
Yeah.
She sees the power that's in me. She believes in me. I can believe in me. I don't always realize the things I'm capable of, the knowledge that I have, that I've gained as a human, as a parent, as an occupational therapist, as a seeker of truth and knowledge and researcher.
As a wife and partner.
As a wife and partner.
You've learned a lot from me, and as I have from you.
Yes, we've learned a lot from each other, haven't we? And it takes stepping back from that. It takes stepping outside of yourself and...
Well, I like to think of it as awareness. It's building awareness in... Well, and stepping out is part of that awareness, being able to look at yourself in a different way, and, you know... talk about the 3-to-1 thing.
So the one thing I've been listening to is he talks about the 3-to-1 ratio in our mind and how important it is. I'm going to pull up the focus here so I can... The 3-to-1 ratio in your mind. He talks about this in relationships and also just the thoughts that you have. That for every negative thought, statement, interaction you have with yourself or another person, you need to have at least 3 positive ones to counter that. And he talks about the history of this when we go back to when we were in survival mode as a human species.
Cavemen.
And he gives the example that it was very important that you remembered the colors of that snake that almost bit you and killed you. How important that was to tune into that negative. And he gives the example of, you know, it wasn't that important to remember the colors of the beautiful butterfly. That did not serve to keep you alive. And so our brain is wired this way. You talk about your reptilian brain, our old brain, our brain stem, where we have these automatic responses where we go into fight or flight or freeze, the survival mode. And we don't really need to be in that hardly ever in our current modern life, and yet it's still there. And it's powerful, and it can overcome us. And so this is an opportunity to think about this. And if you have a negative thought, like, okay, I'm going to focus on 3 positive thoughts now. Or if I interact with my child, okay, I did that. That was negative. They felt... And he talks about what defines a positive interaction versus a negative. You know, a positive interaction, the other person feels positive. They feel empowered. They feel good about themselves. If the other person walks away, you know, feeling bad about themselves, feeling down, feeling upset, feeling like a failure, that's a negative interaction, even if you didn't intend it that way. And so really noticing this, and I think with parenting especially, I see how powerful this is, that with our kids and, you know, partners, that when we do an interaction with somebody, okay, was that positive or negative? And when we've had those negative experiences, trying to find a way to find 3 positive things.
Well, I think, too, it's important there is to accept all of them, though. Accept the negatives in that scenario. To not beat ourselves up about the negative part of it. To accept,
no, because that's a negative message. Then, it's, okay, I messed up, I said that, and that hurt his feelings. Yeah. Yet I did this, and I did this for him, and I'm going to make this choice. I know he loves this. I'll make this for dinner, or I'm going to do this for him. Leave a note in his lunch, thinking about positive things that you can do. So you're not going to wipe out the negative. It's just having the 3 positives, because our brain is going to amplify the negative. That's like all we hear. You know, I tell you this sometimes, is I hear you saying, you didn't get this done, you didn't follow through, you're not following through with things, right? And you may only say that a handful of times, but they're at least, and he says at least, 3 times more powerful than the positive comments that we hear, the positive affirming things from other people.
And I'm going to throw an idea out. This is just coming to me, so I don't want to contradict this, but is there a fine line of distraction there, though? With the negative one, where you're just avoiding distracting. That, I don't know if that plays into this or not, but I'm just kind of came to mind. So that's one thing. Like even as we talked about with OCD, distractions can be helpful at times, but also at the same time it can also be an avoidance that you're not facing it. You know what I'm saying?
I think so. I mean, he talks about seeing the gifts in things. So you have a negative thought about yourself, or you're feeling bad about something you didn't complete. And yet you find the gifts in that experience. Yeah. Even though I was thinking about myself and my extra weight that I've carried around. It's like, well, if I didn't have this, I wouldn't have joined this program with the sugar detox and to meet these women. Yeah. That's what brought me to the program was my desire to
Law of attraction.
lose weight. And so seeing the positive in the negative, so finding, he calls it the gifts in the experience. So, okay, even though I didn't wake up, I got to experience what it's like to sleep in, and maybe my body needed that rest today.
That makes more sense.
You know, so it's not distracting from it. It's just like seeing that, but then also seeing the positive.
What comes from it or what's in it.
Right, and seeing the gifts in it, so that, again, and with relationships, you know, you walk in the door, your spouse comes in, or you walk in, and what are the things you say to them? You know, who left this out on the counter? Why is there a mess here? Now I've got to clean this up. What were you doing all day? Versus, hello, I can tell life was lived here today. Look at the joy that's gone on. You know, oh, it would be nice if the dishes weren't all over when I come home. Yet I know, and you know, so you can say that in there, but along with that, there needs to be the positive, affirming things in there as well. Gee, this could be an opportunity for us to spend some time together, you know. How about we clean this up together, and you can tell me all about your day. So finding, it's not about distracting from it. It's about...
No, I like finding the gift within it.
And, you know, with our kids, they do that. They amplify the negative. You know, we say things. I remember one of my kids would be like, well, stop yelling at me. And I wasn't raising my voice. And I don't even know if it was the tone, but it was just the words that were coming out, the way they were hitting this child. It heard it as being scolded. Sometimes I'll say something just as information, and they hear it as correction, as criticism. You know, we've all got all of our own little messages, our own neurons firing, our own different pathways that have messed up the way we think and moving forward and being positive. And so when I say something to you, you've got your own little neuron pathway here going on that looks different than mine and my past history.
Coming from a household where it was, I think mostly my mom, negative in thinking, you know, she just always
trying to improve and do better. So
well, I think that was her, you know, I kind of look at it as she lost a little girl, my sister, who was a couple of years older than I was, and I think it came into her mind that she had to really overly protect us. So she didn't want to, I didn't think she wanted to show a humorous side or a lighter side. She wanted to make sure we were aware of the negatives that are out there, to keep us safe, to keep us away from them. I see that in parenting in general. But yet, this was on the, it was overboard.
And the interesting thing, you're talking about this, and that's your experience of what you imagine she was going through. She has her own experience. She's no longer with us to share.
Yeah, and she probably would share it anyway. But
we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't want to put that judgment there.
I mean, you talk about just little light note here, but talk about when you come home and what you say, I still have it running through. Every time my dad would come home, my mom would yell from wherever she was, "Who's there, friend or foe?" You know.
Oh, how fun!
And my dad would say, "I'm not sure."
Well, Would he always say, "I'm not sure"?
I'm telling you, he would
he
always
varies?
have some little bit of sarcastic kind
Oh,
of
that's
response.
a nice little thing. You think maybe you've told me that, but I'd forgotten
Yeah,
it.
it was just, it's every time, just whether wherever
Your mother
she
had
wasn't-
that light side to her and that playfulness
I
in
think
her.
that, losing the daughter put a kind of blackened her vision some or something,
Well, and you talk about that 3-to-1 ratio. The negative that you remember has been amplified,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so there was other positive things there,
She
but
was a
we amplified
good mom and a fun,
we amplified the
fun.
negative. So that's
Yeah.
what your experience is coming out of it, right? From my childhood, I tended things I did wrong. Times my parents got mad at me.
Yeah.
Things that didn't go right.
Well, if you go back to the kind of caveman days we talked about, it wasn't just the fear of like that snake. It was also a constant on guard of where's my next meal coming from. When am I going to be able to find the meal? Am I going to find the So it had two sides to that kind of negative.
You had to kind of be on the
guard.
alert. You had to be. Right, survival. You had to have food. You had to have shelter. You had to be safe.
Yeah.
And that's very ingrained in parenting. You talk about your mama bear or your, I don't know what you call it for men.
Papa bear.
That protective nature of, if someone attacks my kid, I'm going to storm, the playground and
The Capitol.
give them a talking to. And let's not go there. Let's not go there.
No.
So we are empowering, wanting to protect our children, right? You had that dream. You were talking about this
Oh yeah.
in an interview we did, and when Harrison was
He
a
was
baby.
I used to dream he was on top of this sand hill, this sand mountain. It was big, and a bulldozer was coming to him. He was on the very top, and this bulldozer was plowing across the top of it. And I'm at the bottom, and I'm trying to climb up, and the sand's just giving away, and I can't get it was. I woke up with one of those kind of moments where you just.
I remember
you
you had that was kind of a reoccurring dream that you had, and he was a small infant, right? That's like.
Yeah, this is when he was. He probably crawling, only he wasn't even walking.
It's funny because he loves hiking to tops of mountains now.
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard to keep up with him. So thinking about our brain, how we interact with people, how we talk to ourselves, there's so many different tools out there that we can use to help ourselves and to help our interactions with our loved ones. And I always say the best teacher we give our children is our example. They learn by what we're doing. So even though I'd love for my kids to engage in this program and do it with me, just by me doing it and them observing it is powerful. Sometimes I feel down on myself, my depression, that I haven't been able to follow through and do activities with my kids like I've wanted to. Yet I know that they see I've had those lull times, and yet I've done things about it. That's funny. It's funny because that's the message from my mother in my head. We'll do something about it.
Get over it. Snap out of it.
We all have those different messages, right, from our parents,
Yeah.
no matter what they are. They see me, they get the opportunity to see me choosing again. I used to do this with the youngest. Okay, let's start the day over. We didn't like how things went. Let's just start over. They get to see me making choices and engaging in these activities. And even when I fail or don't follow through or run into a stumbling block, at some point I pick myself back up and I keep on moving forward.
It's the contrast. It's that necessary that you have to have. They learn from their mistakes on how not to do it or how to do it, and so that's what I tell all the time. Our mistakes are really lessons for our kids if we show them how to get through it.
Well, they need to figure that out themselves. I don't know that we need.
But
By
it's
our
an example.
I guess.
It's an example that
okay.
shows.
I picture you saying, "Now look, I made this mistake, and this is what I did to get through it."
But because I have so many parents that sit in front of me in my sessions that go, "I'm screwing up my kid's life. I've made so many mistakes in my life," and just that right there tells me that they're giving an example to the kids on how not to do that thing. it'll be their choice. But when in the future that child may run into that same situation and be able to go, wow, this is tough, I hate this, but I know Dad made it through it or Mom made it through it. That helps me to know that I can make it through it too.
Mm-hmm. And them seeing you make new choices, right? If you're doing things wrong and you keep doing it over and over again,
Yeah.
well, that's, an abusive relationship. That's a very unhealthy situation. Yet when we make different choices and then we choose to do things differently, as you were describing that, the clients who come to you and say, I'm just screwing up my kids, an exercise just popped into my head of having someone write down, okay, let's write down all the ways I've messed up with my kids. Okay, let's get that out of our system. Now let's write down all the things I've done right.
Yeah.
And kind of looking at the two lists. So that's
Just hope one doesn't outbalance the other, but then you can work on it.
Well, yeah, and just putting it out there in front of you, I think would be a good way of doing that. So we'll have to explore that further.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us on this journey and learning about the Positive Intelligence Program. In our notes, you can see links to the website and learn more about it for yourself or your company. He does a lot for businesses, but there's also lots of examples in his book on relationships and family and other interactions. Hope you've enjoyed our podcast for today. We'd really love to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment. And if you've liked what you've heard today, you can learn more about our coaching program that Don and I do at focusedhealthyfamily.com. We've got workshops ongoing through the year, so you can check those out on the website. You can hear our other podcasts. Be sure to tune into the Tuesday Tips, which are very short little podcasts we do. Follow us on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Gina at Focused Healthy Family. And remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.